I'm Matt Landau from VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 8, First Mover Status. Today's conversation features Michael Skinner of Savvy Travels, who's wise beyond his years. If the majority of the younger vacation rental players that you've come across are looking to get rich quick off Airbnb or sell you some kind of advice while they're driving a sports car, then you're not alone. But a segment of this new wave is actually incredibly sharp and advanced and thoughtful in how they're building their businesses. Michael's a member of VRMB's first accelerator cohort, and in our conversation we'll talk through some of his cornerstone achievements, such as a knowledge base that allows any member of your team to basically disappear and for the company to continue chugging, how to create an organizational chart with tasks and then the value of said tasks as your impact filter. And finally, how to retrofit your business when, after a number of years in operation, high stakes decisions are beginning to penetrate your core business strategy. Today's episode is brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. As with every episode this season, I've asked Michael, what does first mover status mean to you?
Yeah, when I think of first mover status, I think of I'm a big hiker, so I think of hiking through a jungle, where there's no trails that exist yet. So kind of walking through, swinging the machete, hacking your way through all the unknown territory and, trying to leave a path for others, hoping to make it easy and enjoyable for them to, one day follow you, follow that path, take the trail. But the thing with trails is that the best ones obviously lead to something great at the end. So, despite all the highs and lows that you go through, it's ultimately worth it because it builds up to something spectacular. So, maybe that's a peak overlooking a valley or a waterfall or natural hot springs, whatever. But, if you go and clear a trail and it ends at some generic patch of grass or, leads to people falling off a cliff, obviously that's not going to be as popular. So,
Where is the best place you've ever hiked and blazed a trail?
like physically hiked.
Yeah.
I guess the first one that comes to mind is Angel's Landing in Zion National Park. That's pretty treacherous. And that takes you up, pretty much straight up the mountain, overlooking the whole valley. So that's definitely one for the books.
I wonder if there's something about trailblazing, because I absolutely love your interpretation of first mover status in this sense. You are opening up a pathway for others to come through, which seems like universally a good thing. Wondering what happens when you're paving a trail to something really special that maybe could be damaged or have adverse effects of this new wave of people.
Yeah, that's I think one of the risks that you take as a trailblazer, because you don't really know that when you're starting off. That's the whole kind of getting comfortable with the unknown and navigating through the uncertain terrain. As you're clearing things out, you find these things that don't work or that aren't favorable, like something you don't want, and you kind of try to navigate around that or away from that. You're like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to share that with other people. I don't think they'll like that. So let's go somewhere else.
Is this something that you have, like a philosophy you have with business? Are you constantly iterating and seeing what works, what doesn't, tossing out the failures and moving forward?
Yeah. In our company, I try to treat it like a, startup. So we have this startup mentality. It's very iterative. So we're always experimenting and trying to learn from everything that we're doing. And I remember companies that I've studied, like Netflix, for example, or Facebook, they're always like very much test as fast as you can and learn as fast as you can, as much as you can, because that's how you know what works. You can't know what works ahead of time. You can't connect the dots looking forward, right?
And you're pretty new to this industry. And I think sometimes when we're looking at these huge success stories like Facebook or Netflix, we have a tendency to become a little bit disconnected because our craft is so human, so real, so one on one, so down to earth. If you're thinking about writing one of these case studies about your discoveries and your business, what would you say is the top lesson that you've learned?
One of the top lessons I've learned in the hospitality business, and more specifically the vacation rental management, is that personal doesn't scale well. And so when I think of kind of these coming technologies and how we can incorporate them into our business, like AI, for example, it's funny because I got a call from Google the other day, and it was their AI phone caller system. I think is the AI assistant, and they were calling about some business listing stuff online. And I couldn't tell the difference between a human and a robot. It was the only reason I knew it was a robot was because they said, "Hey, this is Google Assistant." Otherwise, it sounded completely human, and so it gets me thinking about things that, like, okay, at some point in time, we're going to have to integrate these kind of technologies, but just because we can, does that mean that we should? And that's a question I think we all have to ask ourselves. And one of the things we do with our owners is we try to, highlight what's going to be the personalized experience that we can provide to you as one of our clients. And then we go to great efforts to structure that and, keep it going.
Did you like schedule a call with a bot or did they cold call you?
No, it was a cold call. It was kind of like a listing update. They were trying to get some information for accuracy purposes, but
That's
it was
hilarious.
very human.
I would almost prefer to hang up on a cold call bot than a human.
Yeah, I'm sure it's much easier. I was just so interested. I wish I could have talked to it more, actually. They hung up on me.
Michael, I want to talk first about the way that you've begun building your company, which is in a number of different markets. Are you still at 10 properties?
We are currently at 18 under active management right now. We're in 5 different markets.
Okay, so this shows how fast you're moving compared to the last time we spoke. You're in 5 different markets in the US. This is not by any means a traditional vacation rental management business model. But as you've put it, it makes for a fun travel schedule. What are those 5 markets, just so listeners can get an idea?
Yeah, we're in Nashville, Kingston, Washington, Oahu, Hawaii, Palm Springs, California, and San Francisco, California.
And are those just destinations that you like?
I do like them. I can't say that's why we're there. So,
Why are you there?
yeah, it was kind of how I got into it was just by saying yes and then, kind of figuring it out. So we had these opportunities that came up that very much started as kind of a side gig. And I have a business partner. We got into the vacation rentals, just very casually. And then we started learning how well it worked and sharing that success with others. And they're like, "Oh, hey, can you do that for us?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And then it just kind of kept growing from there. So like all of it's very much referral based right now at this point. And, it didn't matter what market it was in. Our thought was like, we're really good at taking something that's not being used to the best of its potential and unlocking that potential and going in there and doing whatever needs to happen to do that.
I really like what you did there with Unlock. Whenever I hear from a new vacation rental professional who says, I'm thinking about managing properties in all my favorite destinations around the world, I normally say, stop right there. Don't do it. What have you found that has encouraged you to keep going? What's the big surprise or discovery there?
I don't know that there's any one particular discovery. In fact, when I was, learning more about the actual business side and kind of the professional, going from the amateur to professional, as you teach in the community, I realized that we had it all backwards. Like we should probably start exiting markets. But I think I lead my life, and this kind of translated into the business. I live in a state of surrender as much as possible. And so if that means, we have these problems to face, like you can imagine how treacherous COVID was regulatory wise. Like in 5 different markets, we're trying to manage all the different changing regulations because it's on a city basis or a county basis. It was state or national, and then as things were changing, we had to keep up with all the different regulations. What's allowed here? What's required there? One market we had face masks, the other one was like tests and screenings and all these other things. um, so I think it becomes kind of this, again, an unscalable solution, but by leaning into the problems and being okay with really not knowing, and still trusting that we'll be able to figure it out, we just say yes and kind of move forward.
Now, I want to talk about your team and the way that you hire and how and when you decide to hire them in just a moment. But I'd like to start off with what I feel is maybe the cornerstone of your business from an organizational standpoint, and that's your knowledge base, your internal knowledge base. And the first time I came across this idea was with our fellow community members, David and Gotti and Wes Melton in the Smoky Mountains. They showed me that they had retrofitted a WordPress theme to basically be a library, a database of standard operating procedures for their team members, so that when you log into this thing, there's a simple search field. You type in what you're looking for, and boom, you find the standard operating procedure. Or you don't find it, and they create one. I had never seen anything like that before, but I immediately understood the value that it brings to a business with lots of moving parts and a small business where resources to hire uh, good people are very limited. So, how do you view this base? Do you see it as important as I just described?
Yeah, if not more. I mean, I think it's the uh, documentation is everything. And I learned that the hard way. And that was, as you kind of alluded to, is as we went through the kind of these growing pains in the beginning, from just a handful of properties to, 10 and 12 and more, we had to bring in new people. And when we were bringing them in, it wasn't until I tried hiring and growing the team that I realized we don't have the resources for them to succeed. And most of those resources are information based. This is where the knowledge management system came in. So we had to go and create our own little Google, kind of like, what you were talking about, the WordPress became. It's an internal Google for the company. And so it's very, if you don't have one now as a manager or even a small business owner, I think it's probably applicable to any business, but especially our business.
And what specifically are you using tool wise for that?
Yeah, we use a few different tools. The main one is Notion. It's a note-taking app, but it's very versatile and customizable, so you can build it however you need to use it.
And is that all text, or have you got videos in there as well?
Yeah, it's multimedia, so you can put videos, links. You know, it's heavily reliant on database structures, so you have to know what kind of information you want to use, and then there's the contextual aspect, which is, okay, in what circumstance will I need to know this information? And then you try to build out your workspace that way.
Where did you learn to think this way, out of curiosity?
Oh, that's a good question. I wish I had an answer. I think it's just kind of that's part of clearing the jungle, right? It's like you eat a berry and you find out, is it is it good or bad? You don't know until you eat it.
And so, who's creating these standard operating procedures? Is it you, or is it other team members who are actually doing the thing?
Yeah, I kind of took the lead in creating the infrastructure, and then I try to encourage the team to, you know, share resources, provide resources, edit and update, because obviously I can only do so much. And the way I teach it to our team is I call it the hit by a bus theory. So I say, hey, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, like the business should be so well off that you have everything you need. I don't have any information living inside my brain that you don't have in order to operate the business. So it creates this separation so that the business isn't dependent on any one person, which is, why I'm able to take that, like a 10-day silent retreat I was telling you about. Uh, I can take that time away, and anybody on our team can take that time away because we can just shift things around and have access to, okay, whatever tasks this person was working on and whatever documentation that they usually hold, close to their role. We all have access to that.
And this 10-day silent retreat, I like how you just toss that in casually. Are you training to become like a celebrity or the CEO of Twitter? What was that all about?
Uh, no, I think it's just something for me. It's like a reset, and it's also something that gets me out of my comfort zone.
And you literally go there and you don't say anything for 10 days.
Yeah. I think that's the premise. But what I tell people who are interested in it, it's not so much about the silence as it is about the environment. Because if they take your phone obviously when you get in, and so you have to think about how often have you gone. When's the last time you've gone 10 days disconnected from everything that you know
Never.
and are familiar with? Yeah, never, right? And so when you do that, what happens? Some people are interested to find out. Others are like, "No, I'm good.
Oh, okay.
I'd rather not. I'd rather go to a beach. I'd rather go to Tahiti."
Take me to the party, right?
Yeah.
Did you leave this particular retreat with anything interesting? Discoveries?
Yeah, but they don't let you write it down. You're not allowed to write or journal or anything. So I had a bunch, but I can't remember them. So they must not have been that good.
You should have used some caveman techniques written in on the wall there.
Yeah.
A great knowledge base should be core to any vacation rental professional. The being hit by a bus theory, I like that. Although I'd maybe suggest we go a little bit less dramatic and say you ate the poisonous berry in the woods, didn't return back, or maybe you just return back like a crazy person. What do we think about when it comes to organizational structure and teams? Because I'm guessing that knowledge base is step one, but the right people to hire and how to place them in the right roles comes next.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of the natural unfolding of, I guess, growing the business for us was, okay, now that we have the information, one of those pieces was creating this database of tasks. And so, tasks and roles. I read a couple books about organizational structure, and it was talking about having the right people in the right seats. And you're like, okay, well, I don't even have seats in my organization. So you have to define the seats and say, okay, well, what roles are needed in the organization? And it's kind of weird at first when you're starting out and small because you're the chief everything officer, right? You're wearing a dozen hats depending on the day and the need of your business. And so you kind of have to think through your workflow and how you're spending your time and your effort and your energy and define these roles. And then so once you have the roles, you link those to tasks. So each role has a task. And then when it comes to the hiring process, you look for people that would be a good fit for these roles. You let them know, hey, these are the things that we need done. These are the, I guess, the stipulations, how we expect the performance to be. We kind of introduce them to the culture, how things operate. And then we kind of go through a filtering process to bring people in. And we've had to shift people around and change the roles. But with the knowledge management system, it's very easy because everything is just kind of a few clicks away to make updates.
I was speaking with Sharon Walker in Chicago 2 weeks ago at VRMA Spring Forum, and she told me about this wonderful tool that she created, which is for new homeowner acquisitions. And specifically, my favorite question in this survey that she asks her new homeowners to fill out was essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, how much is an hour of your professional time worth?
Mm.
And she said people are doctors, people are lawyers, people are teachers. Once they put an actual amount on that hour, like they'd receive in their professional careers, suddenly the value proposition of doing that for them changes in a positive way for her. I'm curious if you, at the beginning, when you're thinking about making your first hire, what was your thought process for that first hire? Because a lot of people are stuck in that kind of weird little middle ground of just doing it on the side or as a hobbyist and thinking about getting more professional. How did you make that first jump, that first hire?
Yeah, I love that question that she asked, and I'm definitely going to have to bring that in. For me, making the first hire, actually, I was listening to that episode that you did with Paul from OwnerRes, and I realized what I think he brought up pains, like hiring for pains versus opportunities. And so I realized, yeah, that's kind of what the approach that we had taken. I just didn't know that was what we were doing at the time. But looking back, it was kind of like I was so overwhelmed, and I just couldn't keep up. So then I had to look at, okay, what are some of the, going back to the task list, here are all the tasks that we have. And what are some of the more rudimentary or kind of basic tasks that I can get off my plate so I can focus more on the things that only I can do. And, that's kind of how I hired, was off of the task list of, what would be fit for a role. So first it was like a reservations agent and an admin, and then now we have a few more on our team, and I think it will change as we grow because I'm still occupying a few different roles right now, but yeah, in terms of pay, it's kind of, especially going through that awkward phase of growth where you have some money coming in, but it's also not enough to like pay a lot of people and to pay them full-time salary because you want to make that attractive offer to them. So we try to assign a kind of value the same way that she was at Sharon. She had assigned a value to someone's hour on the client side. We could do that to the team side and say, hey, how much do you want to get paid? Is it $20 an hour, $30 an hour? Do you want a salary? Right. And then we try to match the position, the role, and the tasks to what that person feels their time is worth. So if someone comes to me and says, I can't join your company for less than $50 an hour, I can look at my task list and say, okay, well, I only have 2 tasks that are worth $50 an hour right now to our business. In next year, when we double in growth, I'll probably have a lot more tasks that are worth this, and I'll be happy to bring you in, and I can give you what you want. But it's got to be a natural process. I can't just kind of jump into that.
So I love this process of laying out all the tasks that go into running the company from um, start to finish of the guest journey, kind of categorizing them into roles, putting a number on them. Um, but then we run into this little conundrum, and I don't know if you remember, but Bruce Eichelheimer, in your cohort of the accelerator program, he made a post in which he said, and he was also in this kind of awkward, let's just call it vacation rental pubescent stage, in which he was trying to hire somebody, but he didn't have the income to do it. And I remember he posted about driving like 2 hours to go fix a door hinge himself with a screw that cost like $1. Do you look at certain tasks as more than just what it would cost a maintenance person to do that? And perhaps like, what does it do for the relationship between you and the guest? Maybe showing up or having the chance to, in a human way, interact with them?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more room to take a cohesive approach where you're considering all of these things. But I think that's something we have to earn as a business, right? We have to earn bigger and better problems to work on, and trying to knock out two birds with one stone by showing up, by one of our hired seasoned staff members to show up when a guest has a problem at the property versus, for instance, hiring a TaskRabbit for $20 an hour.
And elaborate for people what that is, because I'm not sure everyone is aware.
Oh, TaskRabbit is like a gig worker app. You can go on there, basically find anyone to do anything. And there's a bunch of apps like this. But if we're in a pinch and no one's available, or we have very specific needs, that it's kind of a resource we'll use to get a need filled for the moment.
And will you then reference the rabbit to your knowledge base?
Yeah, it depends on the work. Most of the times it's pretty straightforward. So if we need to send them a page or directions to the house, for example, or some sort of referential information, we can easily send that to them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you kind of make this first step, and I'm guessing things don't change overnight in terms of confidence. I'm guessing it's a slow sort of period of questioning. Is this the right move? When it comes to the right person, have you learned anything about indicators? Like, is there a sign that you can be like, okay, this is the wrong decision, I'm going to end this experiment?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because I always give the people the benefit of the doubt, and I try to put a lot of faith in them and try to share my enthusiasm for their potential. Just like with our owners and our properties, we see a property, we're like, man, this has a lot of potential to make a lot of money, make you happy, make guests happy. Let's do something with this. And so I take that same enthusiasm with our team. I'm like, man, you got a lot of potential. Our business is growing. I want you in this role. I want you to grow and learn and develop. And sometimes they're not cutting it. And I'm like, okay, well, how long am I going to keep that versus, recognizing that it's not the right person, or it's not the right seat, or something's got to change. So I don't have an answer to that. I think it's kind of just being cognizant. And when the pain becomes too much, you'll tend to the wound.
Here are two tools that epitomize the theme of first mover status, the kind of products and services that actually give you unfair advantages over your competition. Point Central provides smart property solutions for smart vacation property managers. They help streamline operations, protect the property, and enhance the guest experience using keyless access. Why? Because guests are tired after traveling, duh. And being able to go directly to that property with keyless access instead of stopping at a manager's office, this is no longer a luxury. This is a standard practice. Plus, everybody loves avoiding extra trips due to lost keys, not to mention the constant cost of rekeying. Point Central partners stay aware with an activity log of who enters and leaves the property, which helps keep track of cleaning and maintenance crews as well. You can also gain control of your utility bills with their smart thermostats. Schedule set points so guests won't be able to drastically raise or lower the temperatures, for instance. You can ensure the temperature stays consistent when the unit is vacant. Prevent costly maintenance projects caused by water leaks, mold, or HVAC issues with real-time alerts that allow you to be proactive. Visit pointcentral.com/VRMB to learn more. And Breezeway, whose property care and operations platform helps you coordinate, communicate, and verify the detailed work and deliver the best service experience to your guests. With tools for intelligent task scheduling, quality assurance, real-time work coordination, guest messaging, supplies management, owner reporting, and more, oh my! Breezeway helps thousands of short-term rental managers and hospitality operators increase your operational efficiency and eliminate hours of manual work. This allows you to boost your service revenue. It was created by the founding team of Flipkey, which was since acquired by TripAdvisor, and Breezeway is just elevating the experience at every property they touch. Visit breezeway.io/VRMB and get implementation fees waived. That's a $1,000 value right there. Okay, let's get back to the show. One of the other things I know you're very conscious of when it comes to what this team, who's now built upon this wonderful knowledge base, is offering to guests is value. Are we continuing to offer an experience of value when compared to other lodging options? And I think that's one of vacation rentals' greatest strengths when done well. I'm curious if you are running into the same trend that a lot of our colleagues are, which is guests who are getting almost impossibly manageable with regards to their reviews and how you view value in that review process, which is so important.
Yeah, the value equation is kind of tricky because value is subjective. And so what's valuable to one person might not be as valuable to someone else. Um, so I think that comes back to kind of that startup mentality and experimenting and iterating and finding that kind of product market fit of, what do guests enjoy and how can we give that to them? What do they like? Right. And we we aim to give people everything they want and need in a vacation or at their stay. Sometimes we hit the mark, sometimes we don't. But I think as long as we can kind of be present to the situation and listen with a open ear, we'll learn from that and we'll keep enhancing the experience and changing the way that we provide value. So, but you gotta earn bigger problems. So we have to get our basics right. I mean, if guests are showing up to a house that isn't clean, like you don't need to be worrying about upsells and amenity ads. It's kind of first things first.
Are there any tools, maybe one or two in your current tech stack that you couldn't do without?
Well, definitely a PMS, property management software. We use OwnerRes, and that is probably the make or break of our business, I would say. Um, I would say the knowledge management is probably next because I look at our business as an information business. It's very much dependent on people knowing things, knowing the right things, and knowing them at the right time.
Beautiful. And that's Notion that you use for that. We'll include a link to that. And do you use anything for pricing? We talked about the cost of a stay being related to a guest's expectations. Do you use any revenue management or dynamic pricing tools?
Yeah, we've experimented with a few different tools. We were kind of limited, I think, by the integrations that were available to us through OwnerRes because you need those things to work together pretty seamlessly since they are the distribution channel. And Price Labs is what we're using now. We have also tried working with Rented, which in theory I think works really well. I think they've got a great thing going, but there's some room that maybe we're just not the ideal customer for them. But what they do is they have a revenue manager that basically looks at your portfolio, your properties, and assumes that role, kind of like an outsourced revenue manager. The thing is, revenue management is about a lot more than just changing rates on a calendar. You have to be able to know the bookings that are coming in and updating things. I mean, pretty much if you're not touching the calendar and the rates and looking at revenue management overall every day or every other day, then you're not, you're not doing it right. And I think that's where property managers, amateur or professional, they could bring a lot of value that way because someone who's like a doctor, say, they're not going to do that. We had one owner who was doing a flat rate across the whole year. They just kind of picked a number. They somehow arrived at some number, put that number across the whole year, and we're like, guys, man, we could help you double your revenue by the end of the year, just by making a few different tweaks. They're like, okay, let's give it a try. And soon enough, we started seeing like multiple thousands of dollars of bookings come in over what they were getting before. But it does take a lot of work. Yeah.
You've kicked off this interview with the great analogy of trailblazing through a jungle. And we've talked about the risks that are involved in that. We've talked about iterating, perhaps what happens if you suddenly notice you're on the wrong path. What happens when you need to make some serious high stakes decisions with regards to your business strategy? Like I'm thinking with the trekking analogy, it's like, am I going to cross this river or am I going to, stick along the shore side? How do you view these kinds of decisions that'll change your business strategy?
I think Jeff Bezos he kind of makes this analogy to the doors that for decisions, right? There's decisions that you make, you go through the door and you really can't go back. And then there's other decisions that you can make and you can go back, very easily. And so to the river, it's like, if you want to cross the river, you can't go back. I mean, you got to put a lot of thought into that. So one of these decisions that we came through, we try to create a win-win-win for everyone that's involved. And as you know, I mean, there's a lot of stakeholders in our business. We have guests and owners primarily is who's top of mind for us. We also have our staff. We have the neighbors around the neighborhoods that we are operating in, the city, the local stores. So we're trying to make these no return decisions by considering everybody that's involved. And where I found myself getting stuck sometimes is trying to make everybody happy. and that's kind of the hard part. Is it's not about, I think, making everybody happy. I think it's about how much of a win can we get for everyone. Even if somebody gets a tiny win here and somebody else gets a larger win over here, if we're all winning at the end of the day, I think that's probably a decision we can move forward with. But if somebody is winning at the cost of somebody else, it becomes a little bit trickier.
So can you give me an example of one of these decision diamonds that you arrived at and what you did?
Yeah, the insurance problem was a thing that we had encountered last year. We basically, as a business, were trying to figure out insurance all around the board. That's from the business standpoint, from homeowners insurance, how to best protect them and their home, their asset, and then also the things in it. We also wanted to, protect the guests in case accidents happened. And, they were great guests, but what if they break a $2,000 TV or, break a dining room table because their kid, was running around playing, having a good time? I mean, are we going to charge the guest more than what they paid to stay because their kid, had a little boo-boo? I would rather not do that. And so it's like thinking about all these components. You have these pieces of the puzzle. How do they fit together? So that's something that took a few months to research, plan, and kind of put together. And so we arrived at something that I think was a win-win for everyone, because now what we have is this multi-layered, I guess, insurance stack where everyone's protected and better off, and everyone's kind of winning at the end of the day. We don't have to go and chase guests for money when something small or big happens. Obviously, like I said, we give people the benefit of the doubt. But then at the same time, owners, if something does break, owners don't have to come out of pocket for it. We signed up with a company called Wavo. You familiar with them?
No.
Yeah, so they have a really good product. I would recommend. I think they have a 5-unit minimum, but what they do is they provide a kind of contents damage protection that uh, basically serves as like a savings fund. So you take a little money from each reservation, put it in a savings fund, and this kind of spreads the risk across your whole portfolio so that when something does break, inevitably, you just take it from the savings fund. Everybody wins because we're all contributing. These things are bound to happen. It's part of the business. So it just kind of makes sense and it works.
And you said stack. Are there other insurance elements to that?
Well, that's for the guest side of things. We have the homeowners insurance, which we recommend. There's like kind of the LLC and asset protection if you want to go that route. We have our general liability insurance for the business side of things. So it's just kind of all the components of, okay, how is each party protected in the equation of like one guest staying at one property one night?
Mm. And I'm guessing these are things that are very helpful to think about as early on as possible.
Yes. Yeah. But again, going back to you have to earn that because we weren't thinking, it wasn't that we were wrong to not think about it, is that we never had to, that thought never even crossed our mind until certain things started happening. Like, for example, we would have,
Mm.
I remember this one specific instance, we had a guest come in and we use Breezeway for inspections. So our reports are super detailed. And like we have this picture of the living room where there's a lamp and a TV, I think it was, and we have a checklist that says, okay, everything looks good, everything's staged, everything's working, TV is connected to Wi-Fi, right? So we go through this checklist, and the report is filed, so we know the state of the house before the guest came. The guest comes in, the guest leaves. We do the post departure inspection, and the TV's not working or broke or something, and the lamp's like broke. And we're like, okay, let's reach out to the guests, see what happened. We try to, we always try to take a reasonable approach, give them the benefit of the doubt. But he just kind of threw it in our face and was like, this is absurd. I can't believe you would even think that of me, and took it really bad. And so he was, as guests sometimes do, they try to hold the review over our head. And it was like, I think, I don't know, $400 fix. So we go to the owner, we're telling the situation, and obviously like, okay, well, this is a business decision. I think it's best to let this go. We'll just have the property, the revenue from his reservation kind of take care of this. And that's kind of where we realized, well, this is a loss for the owner on one hand. It's a thoughtful loss because we're thinking about how this works. I mean, we'd rather trade the $400 for no review, or because that will impact our future earnings, is how we thought about it. And then so it's not a win-win for everyone. That's the main point. And so that's when we encountered that situation, we said, okay, we have to find a solution to this because this is not going to work. This is not a sustainable way of operating our business, and let's do something about it.
Finally, your business model and your age, how old are you?
30.
All right, so you're very young for our industry. You represent, for me, a new generation of vacation rental professional, not who's trying to get rich quick on Airbnb overnight, but who's doing things thoughtfully, um, doing things with your priorities in mind, with the best interest of your stakeholders. Your model is unique, and it kind of falls into what I'm thinking of, this new general unique business realm of companies like Inspirato and Selena, which was actually born, I don't know if you knew this, in my little neighborhood of Panama, Casco Viejo, Panama, or more specifically, I think it was born down on the coast of Pedasi, but those guys lived in our neighborhood. It's an example of one of these new alternative business models that are really gaining traction. And I'm curious if you, as a millennial, are you?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's what I'm classified
All
as.
right.
Yeah.
So as a official classified millennial, which is really a significant component of this new wave of travelers that everybody's trying to cater to. You are the guest. Um, Talk to me about what you're trying to, where you see your company fitting in that space.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen this shift, especially after COVID, of this kind of different way of living and being, where the lines of work and play or business travel and leisure travel are kind of being blurred. Right, we're blending the two, and we're trying to figure out a way to balance it. I think with Savvy, our whole, our DNA is to try to make the most out of what we have, whatever that is. And when it comes to how we're running our business, how that translates into our life is, we live our product from both sides. We own vacation rentals, so we're on the owner side, and we are guests in vacation rentals. We stay in our own houses, and then we also stay around the world. Personally, I spent, I think in 2021, I think I spent about 80% of the year on the road, just traveling, different cities, different places. So, that's what I would call like a savvy traveler. I mean, that's definitely not a lifestyle for everyone, and I don't anticipate that to be something that everybody jumps on board to. But I think there's a big shift of people starting to realize that that's a possibility, and if they give it a try, maybe they like it, maybe they don't. Maybe they take this path that we've carved out, and they say, "Oh wow, I really like this. I could never go back to my old way of living and being." And at the end of the day, what I'd like to see our company do is provide access to anything you want and everything you need, anytime, anywhere. And that's a big mission. It's a big offering to deliver on. And I don't think we can do it alone. I think it's going to take a lot of collaboration with our fellow vacation rental managers. But overall, it's got to be something where we're recognizing the changes that are occurring now and the changes that are kind of coming down the pipeline. And how are we going to meet the puck? Some of the loftier goals that I have for our properties in our portfolio, I would love to see, carbon positive homes. If we could put eco-friendly products in, solar panels, like have a Tesla battery on the wall or something like that.
EV chargers.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I mean, if we could have a zero waste home, that would be even better. How are we taking this technology that we have access to and incorporating it into our business in a way that makes everybody win? I can imagine if our company bought a Tesla, and like the Tesla somehow, it's approaching self-driving and fully automated self-driving, like our Tesla could go to the airport, pick the guests up, bring them to our Savvy house, on autopilot. They arrive at the house, the door opens for them, and they have everything they need when they get in. All they just bring a toothbrush. We got everything for you. So you can do that all over the world. I think that's kind of the direction, and we'd like to be there for it. I think that's exciting.
Have you considered vacation rentals for silent retreats?
I haven't considered that. No, I haven't. I think the vacation part of it would kind of be the misnomer there. I wouldn't call it much of a vacation the way I experienced it.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we definitely did. Lots of giggling and crazy ideas, some of which might actually work. My big takeaway after talking with Michael is that the future of vacation rentals can be bright. But we have to be supportive of the thoughtful players with sustainable business plans that last longer than just getting rich quick overnight. The players who are open to using technology, some of which may sound plenty futuristic, in order to enhance their personality, their limited edition brand. And people who are constantly questioning, is this a pain that I am solving with technology, or am I losing the very human aspect of my craft? In this sense, I think there's room for anyone, everyone, who's ready to roll up their sleeves and do this operationally complex work. But don't get me wrong, it is work. Slashing through jungles, forging rivers, eating berries of unknown origins. This line of work requires humility and patience, and perhaps most importantly, it requires taking a risk based on an instinct that you have deep down that this hospitality thing is for you. On that almost exact same note, here's a teaser for next week's episode featuring Tom Goodwin of Mount Laurel Chalets in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
I don't think that I'm all that creative, and I never really have a new idea. I just listen to a lot of other ideas and try to meld them into my story. But when I think of where first mover works for me and what it means for me is having a real sense of understanding the story in my own life. What are the previous chapters? What have been my experiences and my relationships that has shaped who I am today and has shaped my company? And being very in tune and understanding those stories, and then looking and seeing and observing the events around me, the relationships, the circumstances, the opportunities in front of me, and always thinking, how does this play out into my story, and what is the next chapter? So for me, a first mover doesn't necessarily have to have original ideas, but they have to have their ideas that work with their personal story and their business story, and being willing to take the risk to step out and do something that's in line with their values and their story, and be willing to begin to write that next chapter, not knowing how that chapter is going to end.
Tom's a member of VRMB's private community, and so is Michael Skinner, who you just heard as well. If you resonate with either of them, consider joining our ranks and leading this movement into the future at vrmb.com/membership.